It's good to be home. The Nintendo GameCube was my childhood video game console. I've talked about how I grew up playing the Game Boy Advance, but that system was primarily my sister's. The GameCube was something I received as a gift around 2006, I want to say. It was the first console I was able to call my own. I spent countless hours playing Mario Kart Double Dash, Mario Party 7, the SpongeBob movie game. I mostly stuck to games that were targeted towards kids, and I definitely stayed as far away as I could from horror games. I'm a really big fan of horror nowadays, but in my youth, I couldn't stomach this kind of stuff. It wouldn't be until many years later that I started dabbling in mature rated video games, including those in the survival horror genre. Resident Evil is my go-to series for this now, and I have a fondness for classic style RE in particular. Exploring an elaborate location like a gothic mansion or police station, solving puzzles and finding keys to progress, all while under the constant pressure of supernatural forces and a ranking system that motivates me to push my skills to the limit and replay the games multiple times. My younger self wouldn't have been able to make it past 10 minutes of these games, but in the collection of GameCube titles I owned as a kid, there was one that arguably contributed in sparking my love for scary media, and it's one of the only games I can think of that tries to give you a heart attack when you start it up. Luigi's Mansion was a game that was just creepy enough for me. See, I can say that I've always been fascinated by horror, but I wasn't always willing to indulge in scary movies or games. Luigi's Mansion had the benefit of being set in a universe I was already familiar with, and well, it's definitely not a horror game, but it can still evoke those spooky vibes in an E for everyone kind of way. I try to replay it at least once a year, usually during October, because Luigi's Mansion is f***ing based. This game is one hell of a good time. It trades a lengthy adventure for one that is endlessly replayable with captivating arcade-like gameplay, a memorable setting, and a ton of charm. It is one of my favorite GameCube games and, to this day, is still my favorite in the Luigi's Mansion trilogy. I mean, it's one of the only GameCube games in my collection that I never sold back when I used to sell my old games to fund newer ones. This is still my original copy that I bought at a GameStop way back in the day. You know that it's from GameStop because the price tag is stuck on the cover art and not on the actual game case. Luigi's Mansion is very special to me, and today, I want to give the game its time in the spotlight. The planning stages for Luigi's Mansion started as early as 1999 with the concept of making a game focused on exploring a series of rooms in a large house. The exact setting bounced around from a Japanese-style ninja complex to a dioramic dollhouse before finally landing on the mansion that we all know and love today. Mario was initially pitched to be the player character, but when it was decided to make the mansion haunted with ghosts and ghouls and the like, the team decided that Luigi made for a more fitting protagonist, someone who could realistically be passed off as cowardly unlike his more heroic brother. This was the birth of Luigi's timid personality that would become one of his trademark character traits going forward. Sure, let's finally give Luigi his own game and have him act like a little bitch. To create the atmosphere the team was aiming for, a lot of work was put into perfecting the game's visuals. The N64 wasn't powerful enough to produce the desired lighting effects and real-time shadows, so the project was set to be developed for the GameCube, known as Project Dolphin at the time. Luigi's Mansion and the GameCube were developed in tandem, in a way that production of the former directly influenced production of the latter. The Luigi's Mansion team, composed of familiar faces like Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, directly asked for certain features to be integrated into the beloved lunchbox specifically for this game. For example, a big reason why the GameCube controller ended up having dual analog sticks is because Luigi's Mansion heavily relies on that second stick to allow players to control the vacuum independently of Luigi's own movement. The game was built as a technical showcase for the console with the inclusion of dust effects, squash and stretch animations for the character models, and jiggle physics for Luigi's nose of all things. Luigi's Mansion made its first public appearance at Space World 2000, when it was simply presented as a tech demo for the GameCube. It wasn't until E3 2001 that the game began to resemble more of what the final build ended up looking like. This is also where we can look at some of the mechanics that were ultimately cut from the final release. The Poltergust 3000 originally had a pressure meter that built up with continuous use of the vacuum and could overheat, which would cause Luigi to take damage from the resulting explosion. The Game Boy Horror also displayed the current time in this footage. This led to a misconception that Luigi's Mansion was initially going to have an in-game time limit, and that the game would end if the player failed to rescue Mario before the end of the night, resulting in a game over screen depicting the infamous possessed Luigi that in actuality was just a scene made for the game's trailer. It's an urban legend and certainly not the last one I'll bring up in this video, and although it isn't real, it's definitely fitting given the kind of game this is. Games like Luigi's Mansion just feel tailor-made for the creation of rumors and myths like these. When the GameCube launched on November 18, 2001 in North America, Luigi's Mansion launched right along with it, and people fucking hated it. Okay, that isn't true, but the game did receive a couple of mixed reviews upon its release. Its short runtime and failure to live up to the reputation of the last big launch title in the Mario series, Super Mario 64, were some of the more common criticisms thrown towards the game. Yeah, Link's crossbow training is good, but is it as good as Twilight Princess? Like, come on, Luigi's Mansion was never meant to be the big follow-up to Mario 64. But the fact that it was a launch title for Nintendo's new system meant that the two were going to be compared pretty much no matter what. If this game and Sunshine had swapped release dates, Luigi's Mansion may have been appreciated more for what it was at the time. Instead, it took a couple of years for the game to gain a cult following, and it is now recognized as one of the best titles in the GameCube's library, leading to the creation of a sequel in 2013 for the 3DS and a third game in 2019 for the Switch. It also helped that financially, the game performed remarkably well, becoming the 5th best-selling GameCube game in North America. Luigi's Mansion is now a franchise, but the first game is undoubtedly still the most unique one of the trilogy. After winning a mansion in a contest he didn't enter, Luigi finds himself in a spooky predicament upon his arrival, expecting to meet up with his brother Mario. With the Jumpman nowhere to be seen, Luigi explores the interior and learns that the house is full of ghosts. Just in the nick of time, this scientist, introducing himself as Professor Egad, saves Luigi from a ghost ambush and the two make their escape and reconvene in Egad's lab. Egad explains that the mansion appeared out of thin air just a couple of days ago, with the spirits having fooled Luigi to lure him there. After learning that Mario did in fact enter the house and has yet to come out, Luigi agrees to learn the ways of ghost hunting to rescue his brother. Equipped with a flashlight, the Game Boy Horror that serves as a map and camera, and the ghost capturing Poltergust 3000, you control Luigi as he pushes through his innate fear of the supernatural to explore the entire mansion and fight any ghosts that get in his way. There are 4 main areas to explore, but each part of the mansion itself is connected seamlessly with no loading. Upon defeating the main boss of an area, the next area becomes available to you. The game follows a structure not too dissimilar to Metroid, with you having to find keys to open locked doors and even discover elemental power-ups for your vacuum to gain access to new areas. These have to be the most fire-resistant walls in the world, I mean goddamn. Most new rooms you enter need to be cleared before you can progress. Clearing a room can be as simple as defeating all of the ghosts in it, but every so often you'll need to solve a puzzle that requires close inspection and interaction with the environment. They can range from lighting all of the candles to checking a toilet to find a key. These puzzles are never too brain-taxing, but many of them are memorable all the same. It isn't too hard to figure out that you need to light the candles in the Astral Hall, but the room looping if you try to exit through this door before lighting them, and the way the combat gauntlet is preceded by the flames turning purple are why this puzzle has stuck with me all these years later. If you do find yourself stumped, scanning your surroundings with the Game Boy Horror not only triggers delightfully charming comments from Luigi that does wonders for building up his personality, something that I will touch more on later, but doing this can also provide hints as to what you need to do. In the portrait ghost encounters, which are all essentially puzzles in and of themselves, inspecting their hearts will clue you in on how you're supposed to capture them. And on that topic, this is as good a time as any to get into the meat and potatoes of the gameplay, the actual ghost busting. It's a system that is simple to learn and infinitely satisfying to master and actually play. And a lot of the joy that I derive from Luigi's Mansion's combat can be directly attributed to the controller. The GameCube controller is one of my favorites out there, and Luigi's Mansion makes impeccable use of its defining features. To begin capturing a ghost, you have to stun them with your flashlight first. In my experience, you want to let a ghost get as close to you as possible, which can easily be done by keeping the flashlight turned off with the B button and releasing the button at just the right time to stun them. Once you do this, you can start sucking them up with the right trigger. Its analog nature and gratifying click when you press it down all the way, making this an input that never gets old. To drain the enemy's health, you have to tilt the control stick in the opposite direction that they're trying to escape in. But the trick here is to continuously flick the control stick to drain chunks of their HP in bursts, a skill that is downright necessary against the portrait ghosts. All of these inputs, combined with the controller constantly vibrating as you work to keep a ghost trapped in the poltergust vortex, makes the ghost busting in Luigi's Mansion feel like an actual, real physical struggle that you have to feel for yourself to properly appreciate. There is nothing more rewarding in this game than being able to capture a strong ghost, one that's constantly fighting against the pull of your vacuum, in one go, or when you're able to hit that sweet spot in a corner and just deplete their health in a matter of seconds, or when you manage to catch multiple ghosts at once. And the feeling is only amplified by the sound design and the jingle that plays once you clear a room. What keeps the combat in this game fresh are the different combinations of ghouls that get thrown your way. These gold and purple ghosts aren't anything too special, but mix them in with these grabbing ghosts that don't know the meaning of personal space, or these garbage ghosts that leave their banana peels on the floor that you can slip on, and you have quite a few rooms that can pose a good challenge. Later on, you'll face variants of ghosts with water, ice, or fire protecting their hearts, forcing you to use the opposite element on them to dispel their shield. In rare cases, the game can even throw a curveball, like the mirror and projection rooms that make you fight invisible grabbing ghosts, and you have to go off of the reflections on the mirror and the shadows cast by the projector to determine where they are. It's this blend of puzzles and combat that makes the portrait ghosts so fun to face, on top of the fact that they all sport varied, creative character designs that communicate exactly what they're all about. This was the first game in the Mario universe to feature such a large humanoid cast, and they don't feel out of place at all. They fit so organically within the setting, unlike some other game that also starred Luigi. As I mentioned earlier, scanning the hearts of portrait ghosts will fill you in on their weaknesses, or give you a general idea of the steps that need to be taken to expose their hearts. No two portrait ghosts are dealt with in the same way, and because of that, these boss fights are arguably the highlight of the game. Sometimes you'll learn what you need to do in these situations literally hours in advance. In Neville's study, you can find his wife Lydia's childcare diary, where she mentions that the twins got mad at her once for twirling the toy helicopter in their room. You aren't actually able to go inside of the twins' room until 2 areas later, and making the helicopter spin is exactly what you need to do to get their attention. Yeah, what I also love about the portrait ghosts in Luigi's Mansion is that they're all essentially part of a big family, and a lot of them are honestly just minding their own business, like Slim Bangshot, who spends his time playing pool by himself, f***ing loser. My favorite portrait ghost by far has to be Melody, a pianist who has an ear for video game music, specifically Mario music. When I played Luigi's Mansion as a kid and I was able to correctly guess the answer to her music quiz, it felt so rewarding that I was able to use my history playing those classic Super Mario games to be able to beat one of the bosses in this game. Being an introvert finally paid off. I also will never forget Sue P. This was one of the few parts of this game that legitimately used to creep me out, more so after reading the girl's bio in the compendium and learning that she died in her sleep. Anyways, let's make her wet the bed. Some of these portrait ghosts are a damn pain to fight though. The Clockwork Soldiers encounter forces you to deal with 3 enemies at once that each have long-range toy rifles, and I have never been able to do well against Sir Weston. The ice physics in the room and the icicles that fall from the ceiling make this guy super difficult to capture, but at least the ice physics let me do this. The area bosses change up the rules of the game since you don't have to point the flashlight at them to reveal their hearts. Luigi would be a great babysitter. I've always struggled against Bogmire since, much like the Clockwork Soldiers, there are multiple enemies in the arena to keep track of at once. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't love this battle, at least for the atmosphere and the lead up to it. But my least favorite boss in the whole game as a kid was Boolossus, this giant boo made up of 15 regular boos. It was always these last few boos that gave me the most shit. When there's only a couple left, they will actively run away from your ice attack and will often stall outside of the arena. You need to bait them to attack you and freeze them once they're caught off guard. I can pretty consistently get a gold rank in this fight now, but the road to this accomplishment is one paved in blood, sweat, and tears. When I was younger, I couldn't properly coordinate my thumbs like I can now to effectively move Luigi and aim the Poltergust at the same time, and I suffered through multiple game overs against Boolossus because of this, which is probably why I hated capturing boos so much. So a little ways into Area 2, Luigi inadvertently flushes out the boos hiding in the mansion and they all scatter to every possible corner of the house. Similar to area bosses, boos are dealt with differently than regular ghosts. You can only search for a boo once the lights in the room are turned on, after which the boo radar on the Game Boy Horror will begin to blink more and more the closer you are to a boo. Once you fish it out, you can start vacuuming it up. But boos require you to make use of the control stick and the C-stick at the same time since they can easily escape the Poltergust suction if you don't keep it constantly aimed at them. Even now that I'm much more acclimated to dual stick gaming than when I was a kid, I still find capturing boos to be kind of awkward. Getting these guys stun locked almost feels like it happens at random, just whenever they feel like it. Unlike the regular ghost hunting, I never feel like I can actually get good at capturing boos. Too much of it feels left up to chance. This is mainly an issue in Area 3 and beyond, when you start encountering boos with health in the triple digits. If you don't capture a boo fast enough, they can leave the room, and if the room or hallway they go into happens to be dark, their health will drain at a snail's pace. Worst case scenario, they'll go into a room so out of the way that it forces you to take a lengthy stroll through the mansion to reach. glitch, or a room that you simply can't enter at the moment. The worst boo hunting area has to be the basement, specifically if you're chasing a boo that likes to move between the breaker room and this hallway. Out of a grand total of 50 boos, you only need to capture 40 to complete the game, so thankfully you can choose to avoid the tedium of hunting those late game boos with 300 health. However, the reward for capturing every boo is a gold diamond, one of only 2 gold diamonds in the entire game, each worth 20 million gold. Nearly every nook and cranny in the mansion is teeming with gold for you to collect. As I went into earlier, Luigi's Mansion is not a long game. You can beat it in about 4 or 5 hours, but the game is designed to be played multiple times, in large part due to the rank you get upon completing it, determined by how much money you were able to stuff your pockets with. From coins and dollar bills to shiny jewels you can find in inconspicuous cupboards, wardrobes, ceiling fans, buckets, and even plants after you water them, exploration and thorough combing of the house is a big part of what makes Luigi's Mansion so fun to replay, to see how much you can improve your high score. Maybe you'll find a secret room filled with treasure that you never knew about before, or find more of those elusive speedy spirits and gold mice that drop a buttload of cash if you manage to capture them. The ranking system also encourages skillful play. You want to avoid taking damage not just to conserve health, but because getting hit makes you lose coins, meaning you also want to be careful not to fall for any traps. Portrait ghosts drop pearls that contribute to your total gold as you suck them up, and if you're able to drain 90 health points from one uninterrupted, they'll drop a big pearl that's worth more than the small and medium pearls that are easier to obtain. This is also tied to an entirely separate ranking system. See, these bosses are all called portrait ghosts because they were all once turned into paintings when EGAT originally captured them. Shortly before the events of the game, King Boo rallied a bunch of his minions to free Boo Losses from its painting, and while they were at it, they freed every other ghost in EGAT's gallery. EGAT uses this machine to turn the ghosts you capture back into portraits, and the dumbass built a reverse function into the machine, which is how this whole mess began in the first place. The type of frame you get for each portrait ghost, with the worst one being bronze and the best one being gold, depends entirely on how well you performed in the fights against them. For normal portrait ghosts, getting the gold frame involves collecting the biggest pearl like I mentioned earlier, and for the area bosses, you have to keep Luigi's HP above 90. The true challenge run of Luigi's Mansion would entail not just getting the A rank, which isn't too hard to do once you know where every gem in the mansion is hidden, but also getting a gold frame for every boss in one playthrough. It's probably possible, but I sure as hell would never be able to do it. Not with the RNG introduced with the poison mushrooms that a portrait ghost can drop if you take too long to capture them. That can make you kiss that gold frame goodbye no matter how well you were playing. Doesn't mean I don't try to do my best to achieve that coveted perfect run every time I replay this game. And honestly, thank God this game is as short as it is. It's such a tightly packed adventure where no second feels wasted. And while there is more depth to the ghost capturing than meets the eye, it would probably start to get old in a longer game. But as it is, in my opinion, Luigi's Mansion is the perfect length. And not only is its design ripe for revisits, its charm factor and atmosphere alone will keep you coming back to this house over and over again. I don't think it'd be a stretch to say that Luigi's Mansion single-handedly made Luigi the fan favorite of the two Mario brothers. Mario 64's efforts to inject more character into Mario should definitely not be ignored, but what this game did with Luigi knocks it out of the park. He's so expressive and animated and dorky, and it just makes playing as the younger brother an absolute pleasure. I love the way that he slowly reaches for doorknobs when unlocking a door, the peace sign and proud grin he shows the camera when picking up a key item, how he taps his foot and scratches his ass when EGAT is talking to him, and when you're exploring, Luigi hums along with the main theme, which is simply amazing. He hums timidly when the area is dark, playing up his fear of the ghosts he knows are just waiting to get the jump on him. But when the lights are on, he whistles more confidently, like he's finally allowed to relax for a bit. And of course, there's the famous Mario call. Every time you hit the A button, you are reminded of Luigi's ultimate goal. Mario! The entire Luigi's Mansion trilogy does such a good job depicting the genuine love the brothers have for each other, and there's no better way to describe it than wholesome as f***. The game's humor also gets to shine the most through Luigi. I already brought up the comments he makes when scanning things, but when he's at low health, Luigi's voice sounds more shrieky and panicked, but this doesn't stop him from humming along with the catchy theme. And when you press the A button now, never fails to make me laugh. The entire game is just oozing with this level of charm. From EGAD's gibberish to the repurposed Game Boy Color used as an interface for the UI, each Boo having a different punny name, running on the treadmill in Biff Atlas's room and getting a key from it. After you discover that Mario has been trapped inside a painting by King Boo, if you hang around the courtyard long enough, you can actually hear him call out to Luigi. When I reached this part for the first time, I thought I was hearing things. The CRT I used to play on didn't have the best speakers, so I could never make out exactly what Mario was saying. Nonetheless, this detail combined with that reveal at the bottom of the well turned this section into a core memory for me, and it really pushed me to see the game through to the end, which meant I had to find all of Mario's shit lying around the house so that Madame Clairvoyant could analyze it and tell me things I pretty much already knew. But hey, the mention of Bowser is pretty neat foreshadowing, and the search for Mario's lost items also involves possibly my favorite moment in the entire game, where Luigi pulls an Eggman and blows up the f***ing moon. I think it was here where I realized that I love this mansion. It strikes an impressive balance of feeling hostile, welcoming, and otherworldly all at once, which makes it fun to simply walk through its halls and rooms for no other reason other than just doing it. It's like when you're bored and decide to kill time by walking around your home. Holy shit, there's a bathroom here? A lot of this is thanks to the atmosphere of Luigi's Mansion, made possible by all the graphics tech the team worked so hard to program into the game. This is a pretty video game that expertly meshes a stylized look with realistic elements like dynamic lighting, reflections, cloth physics. When lightning strikes outside, the shadows of all the objects in a room get cast on every surface. And with how often you hear variations of the classic theme throughout the game, when a room is just quiet, it can be pretty unnerving. I remember feeling uneasy roaming the halls of Area 2 and being able to hear Mr. Lug's eating noises and Melody's piano through the walls. Again, this isn't a particularly scary game per se, but Luigi's Mansion excels at creating an immersive spectral setting for the player to get sucked into and attached with. It is nearly impossible not to become intimately familiar with the layout of the mansion. It is architected with such care that you will subconsciously memorize where each room is located, and with each one being so aesthetically interesting, it serves to build the character of the mansion itself. Looking at the house from the exterior, it even appears to have a face. Since a mansion is a location not too far detached from the real world, Luigi's Mansion captured my imagination in a way that not many other games had done. I remember I'd grab a Luigi plush I had and one of my dad's flashlights, wait for nightfall, and pretend I was playing the game in real life. The connection I formed with this mansion made it feel like a second home of sorts, and I hope I'm not the only one who thinks this way. Before long, you won't even have to look at the in-game map. You'll know it like the back of your hand. And then the game hits you with the blackout at the beginning of Area 4, and you have to remember which rooms you've seen up to this point with mirrors to find the ghost that holds the key to the breaker room. All of a sudden, the mansion is bursting at the seams with ghosts of every kind, adding to the panic and disorientation of everything. If you're brave enough, there are even new speedy spirits that only appear during this section of the game. And holy shit, Luigi's f***ing dead. Yes, the hanging Luigi, as the internet has coined it, can be seen during the blackout. It's a result of the unorthodox camera angle when Luigi is talking on the phone. It pushes his character model's shadow up from its normal position, making it look like he's hanging from the ceiling. If I had noticed this as a kid, I would have shit my pants. Same if the Safari Room Hunter Ghost was in the game, a portrait ghost mentioned in an issue of Nintendo Power that would taunt Luigi with how he wants to mount the poor guy on his wall. This is fake. This Nintendo Power issue was published a month after Luigi's Mansion came out in Japan, and there's nothing in the game's code to support this myth. See, this game does have more in common with Mario 64 than critics initially thought. Both had a bunch of f***ing lies spread about them. But hey, the cup multiplayer mode and stereoscopic 3D are real, and they finally saw the light of day in 2018 with the release of Luigi's Mansion on the Nintendo 3DS. Why did this come out on the 3DS? I mean, it's quite poetic that after all these years, the game that was initially a showcase for the GameCube's hidden 3D capabilities can now be played on a console with glasses-free 3D built in. But this was 2018, man. The Switch was out for over a year at this point, and every time Nintendo shared that they weren't done supporting the 3DS, almost everyone responded with general annoyance, especially in Luigi's Mansion's case, a game that really would have benefited from the HD treatment, but instead, yes! Sure, let's remake the game for a system that is less powerful than the platform it originally released on. This decision was definitely a cost-effective one more than anything, since the sequel, Dark Moon, was also a 3DS title, which gave the team the liberty to import a lot of stuff from that game. But whatever, this is the Luigi's Mansion 1 remake we got, so let's just judge it for what it is. And being real here, I went into this expecting to really not like it, but I was pleasantly surprised by the quality here. This is a competent and, in many cases, impressive recreation of Luigi's Mansion, with just a couple of things holding it back due to the hardware it's on. You don't really get the same kind of feedback you'd get when sucking up ghosts with a GameCube controller. Since the 3DS lacks rumble and a conventional analog stick, the gameplay doesn't feel quite as satisfying as it did in the original. Speaking of analog sticks, if you play on a non-new 3DS model and don't have a Circle Pad Pro, then you're missing out on that additional method of input for controlling the vacuum. Instead, you'll have to use a combination of gyro controls and holding down the B button while moving the circle pad to get Luigi to face the way you want him to. It is something I got used to after a bit, but it's nowhere near as intuitive as the original game's control scheme, which made me relive the frustration of the Boolossus fight when I spent most of it fighting against the controls to get that damn last boo. This is probably why they added the option to use the strobe bulb from Dark Moon, which can help alleviate the struggle a little by giving you a more reliable method of stunning ghosts. Visually, this is a gorgeous game for the system. Compared to Dark Moon, the level of detail is cranked up exponentially for nearly every environmental asset, and it even outshines the GameCube version in certain areas. The final boss segment looked strikingly good to me. This does come at the cost of performance when the action gets busy, and it's especially noticeable in the new co-op mode, I mean my lord. But fidelity-wise, it's one of the best looking 3DS games I've seen, and the 3D effect is really good. It's like you're peeking into a dollhouse, which if you remember, was one of the suggested settings for the game. I will say that I do prefer the GameCube version's character models though. The original game was released right before the Mario cast received their updated modern designs, and I've always had a soft spot for the way the characters looked in the N64 era, where Luigi wasn't as lean and tall as he is now. It gives the original Luigi's Mansion that extra bit of charm and distinct visual identity. The main reason to play the 3DS version though is the updated Hidden Mansion. See, Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube had this mode as well that unlocked after you beat the game. Think of it like a New Game Plus. Your vacuum is twice as powerful at the cost of you taking twice as much damage when you get hit, and there's more treasure around the mansion to boot. Luigi's Mansion 3D completely revamps the Hidden Mansion, turning it into something more along the lines of a second quest. Every room now has different formations of ghosts, and you'll encounter ghosts that normally only appear in later areas much earlier. All enemies have 1.5 times more health and hit harder too. Some portrait ghosts like Chauncey have new attacks and behaviors to make them more difficult. Portrait ghosts themselves now have a new rank to aim for with the addition of platinum frames, and you can rematch them at any time in the gallery, and the gallery itself looks completely different. There's a new S rank to shoot for, the locations of Speedy Spirits and Mario's lost items have been shuffled around, and all of these changes added up offered a refreshing take on a game that I had essentially memorized by this point. It felt like playing Luigi's Mansion for the first time all over again, and for that, I loved the Hidden Mansion on 3DS. At the same time, it kinda pissed me off. This version of the main adventure is hard. I feel like some rooms go a little overboard with the amount of strong enemies you're asked to deal with at the same time. In the first Luigi's Mansion game, Luigi just isn't equipped to deal with this much oppression. Not like the third game where he at least has a way of dodging attacks. Here, I had to learn the importance of letting go of ghosts early to avoid an attack coming my way. Sometimes though, damage feels unavoidable, like when I get hit because I temporarily lose control of Luigi when he's in his startled animation. Regular ghosts can now randomly drop poison mushrooms, and to top it off, there is no way to recover health in the Hidden Mansion, unless you are able to capture 2 or more ghosts at once. The hearts they drop are the only ones you can find in this mode, and the big hearts you used to be able to find in furniture right before an area boss are replaced with "you gotta be f***ing kidding me." I feel like I'm playing Lost Levels all over again. But unlike Lost Levels, I had a really good time playing through this version of the game. It's challenging, yes, but incredibly fulfilling. It should be noted that Hidden Mansion 3DS is partly based off of the Hidden Mansion you can find in the PAL release of Luigi's Mansion on GameCube. The PAL Hidden Mansion has some differences that still didn't make it to the 3DS remake, like the completely mirrored map and the remixed Boolossus boss battle that had Luigi riding around the arena on the Poltergust. To be honest, I'd really like to see another remake of this game that fully restores these elements to create a definitive Hidden Mansion and gives the game the HD touch-up it deserves with modern home console controls. I would definitely buy it because I love Luigi's Mansion. I'm not gonna pretend like it's some kind of revolutionary masterpiece or anything, but it doesn't have to be that. It was never meant to be that. and I adore this game to bits, from the opening all the way up to the climactic final battle against King Boo. It likely played a hand in why it felt like slipping into a comfortable pair of shoes when I eventually picked up the Metroid series and the Resident Evil series. I feel confident in saying that Luigi's Mansion helped form many of my gaming tastes, and it was one of the first games I actively put the time into to properly master. A single player game of all things, which might also be why I now have so much respect for speedrunning and the world of competitive gaming. Luigi's Mansion is delightful and endlessly replayable, and while I'm not one of those people who disregards the sequels because they're not the first game, I can't deny that the original is still my ideal Luigi's Mansion experience. And that's about all I had to say about this game. Well, there is still the options menu. And what the hell is this?